Everyone loves to hate Jenny from Gossip Girl, but I'm here to defend Jenny. Justice for Jenny Humphrey. So if you really think about it, Jenny was screwed over by every single group of people in her life that you can possibly think of. We're talking about her family, her friend group, her bosses and industry colleagues, and all of her boyfriends / romantic love interests. Let's just start off with her family. Her mother abandoned her. Her father struggled to support her dreams of becoming a fashion designer. He was treating her desire to be a fashion designer as if she was addicted to drugs or out trying to be a stripper. Like, he could not wrap his head around his daughter being successful and coming into her own as a teenager in an industry, in the fashion industry. He just couldn't handle it. She never got any support from her own dad. And then worst of all, her big brother was Gossip Girl the whole time. Okay, and then her friend group. Jenny was always trying to play catch up, always trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to fit in with a group of girls who were extremely wealthy, and Jenny was never going to be able to compete. She just didn't have the funds. The one person who she wanted to be friends with more than anyone and who she was constantly trying to impress was Blair. Blair is one of my favorite characters, by the way, but Blair was extremely toxic to Jenny to the point where she even banished Jenny from Manhattan. I will say Blair wasn't totally in the wrong for that because Jenny had just, hooked up with Chuck. Blair was in a state of shock when she banished Jenny. I'm not really, Jenny shouldn't have done that. She shouldn't have hooked up with Chuck, but I mean, it was really interesting for the storyline that she hooked up with Chuck, but it just wasn't individually good for her at her core. But then part of me does feel like Blair took it too far. Like, Jenny did not have to be banished from the entire island of Manhattan for hooking up with Chuck. Like, she might not ever be able to be Queen Bee. She might never be able to hang out with the popular people or go to any cool parties, but to be fully banished is like, whoa. Let's move on to her bosses and industry colleagues. Eleanor Waldorf, who definitely had awesome character development and became super likable by the end of the show, did not treat Jenny with a modicum of respect earlier on in the show, to the point where she was even willing to steal Jenny's fashion designs. Toxic. Eleanor wasn't a great boss to Jenny, point blank. And then industry colleagues, Jenny worked alongside models. These models obviously didn't have her best interest. Eyes on You, Agnes. Agnes literally drugged Jenny and put her in a situation where she could have been sexually assaulted. It was out of control. And there was other models or people working behind the scenes who knew what Agnes was doing and who were condoning it and greenlighting it. And last but not least, her boyfriends and hookups. Like, every single guy who entered her life hurt her or broke her heart. Like, starting with Asher. He was gay and secretly gay and using Jenny to hide his sexual orientation. Damien Dalgard turned her into a drug dealer and then was pressuring her to have sex before she was ready. She had that one night stand with Chuck that I mentioned before, which was extremely toxic because it got her banished from the island. And then Nate, I think, is her biggest heartbreak of all because she wanted him more than any other guy. And for the most part, he kind of did a lot of leading her on. Like, if it was ever between Jenny and Serena, for example, Serena was always going to win. Jenny was never going to be able to compete. When it was between Jenny and Vanessa, Vanessa was the one who was going to win. It didn't seem like whoever Jenny was up against, she just wasn't able to compete. And I feel like that was probably really heartbreaking for her. Ultimately, I'm going to say justice for Jenny Humphrey. I feel like her cards were stacked against her. I feel like so many groups of people screwed her over that I can't even be mad at her. Like, justice for Jenny.